Hey, what's up you guys? I want to share a story with you guys, but today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to include as many images as I usually do so that I can get this video out quicker to you guys. It takes me a while to gather up all those images and make sure that they're copyright free or, Creative Commons, so that I don't get any copyright strikes against my account. I wanted to talk about an abusive relationship that I was in. This relationship wasn't physically abusive, it was more, I guess, mentally or emotionally abusive. This all took place when I was 19 years old. I started hanging out with one of my family members who had a friend who I'm going to call Jack, and Jack was married at the time. We started hanging out with Jack and his wife, and Jack and his wife were both Korean, and I remember that one of the times that we went to hang out with them, they were actually fighting in Korean and we had no idea what was going on, but it seemed like Jack's wife was annoyed that we were there. At least that's how it came off, and Jack eventually asked us to leave. But the way that they were fighting, it kind of left a bad impression. Like, things weren't really going very well in their relationship. And eventually they did end up breaking up. And sometime after they broke up is when Jack started pursuing me. But he didn't pursue me in a normal way. I guess you can say he pursued me in a way that, like, a little kid would pursue a girl. But instead of like hitting me or something, he was like trying to like kiss me, even though I was like pushing him away and telling him to stop. And he actually did this in front of my family member. I was kind of confused by this behavior because Jack is this older person who is like acting like a little kid, and I kind of just thought, okay, I guess he's just playing around with me. This is weird for this older man to be behaving this way, but I just didn't take it that seriously. I just found it really annoying. But Jack actually did something that was like over the top. He got on top of me. He actually pinned me down and was trying to kiss me forcefully. I just kept turning my head sideways, trying to avoid him. And I turned my head so much that my hair actually got really knotted up. I don't know why I let this go on. I did ask my family member to help me because, this is their friend and I'm in an extremely awkward position here with this guy on top of me trying to forcefully kiss me. But my family member didn't seem to take it serious either. And he said he didn't want to get involved. And I was actually kind of hurt that my family member didn't help me in this situation. I mean, this guy was on top of me and I was not strong enough to get him off of me. I understand he didn't want to like get physically involved and like start pushing his friend around or something, but he could have at least told him to stop and leave me alone. But he didn't do that. And I'm sure some of you are going to think that it's pretty crazy that I would actually get involved with somebody who would do this. But at the time, I was pretty naive. So there came a time when he asked me to date him, and my first instinct was to say no because I found him really annoying and I didn't find him attractive at all. I never had a real relationship before this, but before this happened, I was kind of played by a guy who I was interested in and who I thought I was in a relationship with, but he was just stringing me along and like playing with me. So I was feeling pretty down about that, and I decided to take a chance and go out with this guy, even though I didn't really like him. And I kind of thought, well, maybe he'll be nice, maybe I'll grow to like him. And I also kind of thought, I don't really have that many options right now because my self-esteem was pretty bad at that time. So I went out with this guy and it wasn't so bad. We went to the movies and I remember we had a nice time. He was acting more mature then. He wasn't acting crazy. We went back to his house, which was something I was kind of used to doing because I went there with my family member a few times already. So I didn't think anything bad could happen. I think when we got back to his house, he offered to give me a massage and I said okay. And he started to get a little bit too touchy-feely, and I guess he thought that because I let him give me a massage, that it was okay to touch me. And he started trying to pull down my pants, and I started fighting him trying to pull up my pants. And I don't remember how long this went on for, but I don't think it was too long. Eventually he kind of stopped, and then he started apologizing to me and said that he just lost control. And yeah, I still dated him after this. Isn't that screwed up? There were so many bad signs, and yet I still dated this guy. But that's what happens when you're desperate and you have low self-esteem. You're willing to settle even for garbage not worth your time. After that incident, I was reluctant to go back to his house, and he ended up buying a cat because he knew that I liked cats. He bought a kitten, and then he invited me over and said he wanted me to come see the kitten, and because I wasn't really around cats that much and I really liked them, I wanted to go. So I accepted to go to his house again. But luckily nothing bad happened this time. He actually behaved himself. And this guy, he wasn't attractive at all. He was pretty unattractive. And I figured that the way that he was behaving might have been because he didn't have any experience and he didn't know how to behave around women, despite the fact that he was married. You know, I guess I wasn't putting it down to like, oh, this guy is screwed up, that's why he's acting this way. I tried to like rationalize his bad behavior. He started treating me better, and he started kind of trying to like buy me off, I guess you can say. He would always tell me if I needed anything that he would get it for me. And then he'd also try to like tend to my needs. Like if I need, you know, my physical needs as in like food and stuff like that. He'd always be like asking me if I wanted something to eat, if I wanted something to drink. And then if I did want something to eat, he would say we could have whatever I wanted. He would order whatever food I selected. So this is how he treated me. And up to that point, no one has ever actually treated me that way. You know, trying to do things for me. It was actually something that was missing with my parents. Like they didn't really take care of me in that way. So the fact that somebody was like doing these things for me and going through all the effort of trying to make me happy and tend to my needs, it made me feel good. It made me feel cared for. It made me feel loved. At some point, he started becoming less concerned about fulfilling my needs and more about like getting angry when I didn't do things that he expected me to do. At first, it was little things which he would get angry about, and to me they seemed like insignificant things, but I figured he just didn't have that much patience. Over time this got worse. It got to the point where I felt like I had to walk around eggshells around this guy because everything would set him off. I felt like if I wasn't perfect around him, he was going to get angry. He made me feel like everything was my fault. I was very unhappy with my home situation. I was living with my mother and I really hated being around her. And even though this guy tended to get angry sometimes, I figured it was better to live with him than with my mother. So I moved in with him, and I remember that the very first day when I was moving in with him, he got angry with me because he was kind of nagging me about something. I don't remember what, but I just gave him like a one-word answer and said no or yeah, and he told me not to speak to him that way. He told me that I have to respond to him in a full sentence, and then I reluctantly did that. I responded back in a full sentence. It felt like I was being treated like a child, and like I only existed to do what he wanted. And if I didn't do the things that he wanted the way that he wanted, that something was wrong with me. I just felt so hurt that he was trying to control even the way I spoke. And I just started crying right there in the car as we were driving to his house for me to move in with him. And this is something that also should have made me think twice about moving in with him. But whenever I cried because he was treating me unfairly or saying things that were mean to me, he would actually get angrier at me for crying. It's like he had no empathy. He could see somebody suffering and he didn't care. His only response was to just get angry at the person. Now I look at that and I feel like, wow, this guy just really didn't have a heart. Or maybe he's just that narcissistic that everything revolves around him, and that's why he doesn't care about other people's feelings. When I lived with him, I was actually fearful of him coming home. Instead of feeling happy that my partner was going to be home, I was actually afraid that he was going to get angry at something that I did wrong. He wanted the house to be perfectly spotless. He wanted me to clean every single day, and he would get upset if something was out of place. He would get upset if he knew that I played video games. And he also wanted me to time dinner perfectly so that it would be ready when he was home. He'd tell me that I have nothing else to do, so I should have dinner ready for him on time. And it's not like he was reasonable. If dinner was 5 minutes away from being done, he would be upset. It had to be done exactly when he was home. And instead of caring about fulfilling my needs like he did in the beginning, he basically just wanted his needs met, and he became really cold and unaffectionate. Not that he was ever really affectionate, but I guess I didn't really notice until he was just always upset about everything all the time. I could really feel the divide between us when he was just getting angry over little things, and on top of that, he wasn't kind or affectionate or loving in any way. It kind of felt like my very strict and mean dad was home, and I had to behave perfectly, otherwise I'm gonna get yelled at and belittled. There were times that I complained to him and I told him that he had an anger problem, and he kind of just ignored that, or he would just get mad at me when I said that. Eventually I got tired of it. I couldn't take it anymore. To me, this was worse than living with my mother, because I literally felt like I couldn't move sometimes without him getting angry at me. It was a horrible way to live. So our relationship was basically that, although he did sometimes spend money on me. But eventually, as he was getting to his angrier phase, he started doing less of that, and sometimes threw it in my face that he bought me stuff and said that I wasn't thankful enough. But it doesn't matter how many gifts somebody buys you, it's not worth sticking around if they're going to treat you like shit. I decided to break up with him, and on the last day that I was with him, he told me that he couldn't believe that I was leaving. He really didn't believe that I would do that, and I was laying in bed and he got on top of me and he put his hands on my neck and said, "If I can't have you, nobody will." And his hands were on my neck, but he didn't squeeze. And it's like he thought about it and he thought, this is a bad idea, and then he just laid down next to me and started crying. But for like a second, I thought that he was actually going to choke me. But my dad was coming the next day to pick me up and pick up my stuff. So if I suddenly disappeared, or if I suddenly died when my dad was going to pick me up, I'm sure it would have been extremely suspicious, and he would have been the prime suspect. I don't know if he actually would have gone through with it if it was under different circumstances, like if I didn't have any family and nobody would notice that I was gone. But even after this, there were times where I got back together with him, and it was so many times that I actually lost count. And in between the breakups, I had other relationships. I mean, his anger improved a little bit, but underneath it all, he was still an angry person who would get angry at the drop of a hat. He just seemed to control it a bit better. And I kind of got wise to his manipulation tactics. And I also realized that instead of crying when he did something hurtful, I should just get mad at him, because that seemed to be more effective. It's like if I was weak in front of him, he felt like he could abuse me more. But if I was strong and acted like I didn't need him and I was upset, it seemed like he had more respect for me, and he'd be more willing to apologize for what he did. I don't think he would have done that in the beginning of a relationship. He did say he went to anger management. I can't verify if he did or not, but I did notice that his anger was more under control. And he was manipulative in a lot of ways. I didn't really talk about that, but one of the things he did was, if I ever complained about something he was doing, he would turn the conversation around to something that I did. And I thought that was a manipulative tactic to steer the conversation in my direction rather than talking about the things he did wrong. He also lied to people sometimes, and including me. He would exaggerate things, like if he bought you a mug for $5, he'd tell you he paid $10 or $15 for that mug. Sometimes he'd also say how it was a struggle to find the mug. He'd kind of make things seem like they were more important than what they were, and like he went through such great effort for you. Our last breakup was a few years ago, and I'm fairly certain that's going to be the last time I ever date that guy ever again, because I'm in a new relationship now. Well, it's not new. I've been with this guy for a couple of years. I found this email from the past, and this email is actually to the family member I mentioned in the video. And I'm sorry if there's any noise in the background, because right now it's actually raining, and the rain is actually bouncing off my air conditioner and making some noise. Hey. It's really hard to get rid of Jack. This is the hardest breakup of my life because he just won't give up. I feel like I'm being tortured. I keep trying to stay firm and not let him think there's hope, but he guilts me into seeing him and threatens me. He threatens me that he was going to call the cops on me and say I stole the computer and other stuff he gave me. He says he has receipts for it all. He makes me feel guilty by saying I was messed up to him and I should help with the dog and that he deserved another chance. Well, the thing is, he is very manipulative. He will do what it takes to get what he wants. I never realized how manipulative he is and how much he lies to me. He tells me stories to make me jealous all the time, stories about other women. Then he says he was kidding He plays a lot of mind games. Throughout the relationship, in the beginning, he used to say, you know, you're cute, but you're not beautiful. He told me I was obese one day when I was way thinner than now, and told me he doesn't find me attractive anymore because I gained weight. He used to try to make me feel bad about myself so that I wouldn't think that I could get someone better than him. I'm not very good at judging people, but from what I see, you're even worse than I am. You do learn a bit from experience how you can trust people. I tell about a lot of things Jack has done, and she has helped me a bit to see the stuff he does. That sentence doesn't make a ton of sense, but I know what I was trying to say. This person I'm referring to was my friend, and she made me realize some of the manipulation tactics my ex was using on me. He is very manipulative and very intelligent. I tried to tell you how he is, but I guess you would only understand if you were me and saw how he acts in my eyes. In the beginning of the relationship, he would do nothing but yell at me. He even told me that he thought if he was mean to me, I would grow up. He would yell at me, and when I was affectionate to him, he would push me away and say stop that. He blames everything on his anger problem and says he is well now. Maybe he is, but he seems mentally unstable to me. How could he make threats to me? Says he's going to hate me if I don't get back with him, and I don't know what his hate is capable of. That his hate will be as strong as his love. Okay, you guys can see how real this is just by how many grammatical errors I have in this email. But hey, this was 2006, you know? I think my grammar has improved since then. It's not perfect, but I think it's a little better. Anyway, if I would have proofread this email, I probably would have noticed that mistake. He scares me. I don't know what he's capable of. I just hope when he says those crazy things, he is just saying it out of frustration and not because he is really crazy. I know you're his friend and don't want to get in the middle of this. I'm just really getting frustrated myself. I don't want to be mean to him because I'm scared he might do something as revenge. I'm trying not to be mean, but at the same time, not give him hope. And you know, it's kind of a good thing that I still had this email because I actually forgot about some of these things that he did. But I remember this was when I started seeing someone else and we had broken up, and he was upset that I was dating somebody else. So he was making all kinds of threats to get me to break up with this guy. And he was also trying to like force me into seeing him. And he even, as you can see, he was threatening to call the cops on me and claim that I stole things that he gave me as gifts. And this was actually one of the worst breakups we had because he was acting extremely crazy at this point. You know, I mentioned how he's manipulative, and one thing I forgot, which I think is pretty significant, is that he was cold to me sometimes. And when I was trying to be affectionate towards him, he would tell me to stop and leave him alone and act like I was being annoying by giving him affection. But when my family member was around, that's when he chose to be affectionate towards me and be like overly affectionate. And at first I didn't understand why he was doing that, but then later I realized that he tries to act affectionate whenever I have family around because he wants to like manipulate them into thinking that he's a good boyfriend. I guess so that when things are going badly, he can always blame things on me because, you know, he was a good boyfriend and I was a screwed up girlfriend who does everything wrong, right? So there's some things in the email that I kind of wanted to address. When we were living together, we had a dog, but when I broke up with him, I moved out, and in my apartment, I wasn't allowed to have dogs. So he kept the dog, and he was trying to use the dog against me and trying to tell me that, you know, I convinced him to buy this dog and now I abandoned it and he can't take care of it by himself. And I also kind of wanted to address the weight thing. He told me that I was obese, but, you know, I've never really been very thin. I was always a little chubby, had a little bit of meat on my bones. And when I met him, I was a normal weight. It was only when I was with him that I actually started gaining a lot of weight. And my current boyfriend, I told him about some of these situations, and he kind of thinks that maybe I had gained so much weight with that guy because I was so unhappy in that situation. And sometimes when people are unhappy, they turn to food for comfort. And I'm not sure if he's right about that, but it's a possibility. Another thing I should say about this is that, you know, we got back together so many times because I would always break up with him because he was being an ass. And sometimes months would go by. There may have even been times when a year or two went by, and he would start contacting me, and then he would start begging me to get back with him, telling me how he's changed and that things are going to be different, things are going to be better, he's going to treat me the way I deserve to be treated. And as usual, I was reluctant to start anything with him, but he did end up convincing me to give him a chance. He was incredibly persistent, but I always ended up regretting giving him a chance because just like when we first got together, he would treat me nice in the beginning and then revert back to his old ways of being an angry, mean, belittling. And I hope that none of you will actually think of me as like this really naive and dumb person, because I fell for this stuff. But you know, I was young back then, I was naive like I said, and I didn't have any experience with dealing with people and relationships. But I have learned from my bad experiences, and I wouldn't put up with somebody like that. And it's actually easier for me to tell when somebody's manipulating me, just from my experiences with this guy. I mean, I may not be an expert at detecting deception, but at least I'm a little bit better at it now. And hey, maybe my bad experience will help somebody else avoid someone like this. I could go on about this relationship for a long time. I have so much to say about it, but this video is gonna end up being way too long. But if you guys have any questions or any comments, let me know. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye bye.